Have you ever spent hours breaking your back in the hot sun, pulling weeds and hauling heavy bags of soil, just hoping your vegetable garden survives the season? What if I told you that you are completely ignoring the easiest, fastest growing food source on the planet? Today, I am going to show you how to generate an unlimited supply of pure edible protein for just $5 using a simple plastic trash can. There is absolutely no dirt involved. There is zero sunlight required, and the best part is that the entire setup takes exactly 5 minutes of your time. You are probably thinking this sounds impossible, or that it is some crazy internet gimmick, but this is actually a closely guarded secret used by the smartest, laziest homesteaders to double their food production while barely lifting a finger. Stick around until the end, because the way this trick supercharges your traditional raised beds will completely blow your mind. Are you ready to stop working so hard and start harvesting more? To understand how we can magically pull pounds of protein out of a dark trash can, we have to look at how nature breaks things down. In a traditional garden, we plant seeds in the soil, rely on the sun for photosynthesis, and wait months for a yield. But fungi operate on a completely different set of biological rules. Mushrooms, specifically oyster mushrooms, are nature's ultimate recyclers. They do not need the sun because they do not photosynthesize. Instead, they consume dead organic matter and convert it directly into highly nutritious, protein-packed food for us. For decades, the commercial agriculture industry has tried to convince us that growing mushrooms is incredibly complicated, requiring sterile laboratories and expensive equipment. But as homesteaders and organic gardeners, we know better. By harnessing the aggressive growing power of certain mushroom strains, we can turn the dead leaves, cardboard, and pruning waste from our yards into massive clusters of food. And we can do it all in a cheap plastic bin. Let us start by completely shifting how you think about growing food on your property. When most of us think about gardening, we immediately picture heavy shovels, aching backs, and months of anxiously staring at dirt, waiting for a tiny green sprout to appear. We dedicate endless hours to our raised beds and fruit trees, battling weeds and weather just to get a decent harvest. But what if I told you that one of the most productive, nutrient-dense crops you could ever grow requires absolutely zero soil, not a single drop of sunlight, and less space than a standard patio chair? We are talking about cultivating pure edible protein using nothing more than a cheap plastic trash can and the dead plant matter you already have lying around your yard. This is the magic of growing oyster mushrooms. By utilizing the leftover dry organic matter from your garden, like old corn stalks, dry leaves, and plain brown cardboard, you can create a biological powerhouse. This method completely bypasses the traditional growing season. It does not matter if it is freezing cold or blazing hot outside, because you control the microclimate inside that simple plastic bin. This is the ultimate lazy gardening secret that turns your worthless yard scraps into premium food. Now, you might be thinking that growing mushrooms requires a fancy laboratory, expensive humidifiers, and people walking around in white hazmat suits. That is the biggest myth in the entire agricultural world, and it is a lie that keeps thousands of homesteaders from producing their own endless supply of protein. Let us take a step back and look at how nature actually works. Have you ever taken a walk through a dense, wild forest right after a heavy rain? Did you see anyone in a lab coat sanitizing the dead logs? Of course not. Nature is incredibly messy, chaotic, and dirty, yet it produces millions of tons of fungi every single year without any human intervention. When we set up our $5 trash can system, we are not trying to create a sterile hospital room. Instead, we are simply recreating the damp, shaded environment of the forest floor, right there on your patio or tucked away behind your fruit trees. We are giving the mushroom mycelium an unfair advantage over the competing molds and bacteria by using a very simple, lazy preparation method that I will show you in just a moment. Do not let the fancy terminology intimidate you. If you can mix a bucket of compost for your tomato plants, you have more than enough skill to grow massive clusters of high-protein mushrooms in a plastic bin. The first actual step in this process is sourcing your container, and this is where that $5 budget comes into play. You do not need to buy a specialized growing chamber from an expensive gardening catalog. All you need is a standard, cheap plastic trash can with a tight-fitting lid. You can find these at any local hardware store, or you might even have an old one sitting empty in your garage right now. The size is entirely up to you, but a 5-gallon bucket or a 10-gallon trash bin is the absolute perfect starting point for a beginner. The plastic acts as an incredible barrier, trapping the humidity inside while protecting your growing protein from outside pests. Before you start doing anything else, you just need to give the inside of the can a quick wash with some mild soapy water. Again, we are not trying to sterilize it for a surgical procedure. We just want to make sure there is no old, rotten debris stuck to the bottom that could introduce aggressive green mold into our system. Once your cheap plastic bin is clean and dry, you're ready to move on to the customization phase, which takes about 2 minutes and transforms this ordinary trash can into a high-tech mushroom fruiting chamber. Here is where the real magic happens with our container. Mushrooms breathe oxygen and exhale carbon dioxide, exactly like human beings do. If you just lock them inside an airtight trash can, they will completely suffocate, and your project will fail before it even begins. So, grab a standard power drill with a 1/2-inch drill bit. You're going to drill holes all around the sides of the trash can, spacing them roughly 4 to 6 inches apart. These holes serve two incredibly important purposes. First, they provide the essential fresh air exchange that the mycelium needs to stay alive and colonize the material. Second, and most importantly, these little 1/2-inch holes are the exact exit doors where your massive clusters of mushrooms will eventually burst out into the world. You do not need to drill any holes in the bottom or the top lid, just keep them scattered around the main body of the can. Think of this step like designing the windows of a house. You want enough airflow to keep the environment fresh, but not so many holes that all the precious humidity escapes into the dry outside air. Once you have drilled those holes, your $5 growing chamber is officially complete and ready for action. Now we need to talk about food for our fungi, which we call the substrate. This is the absolute best part of this system, because the food is completely free and likely sitting in your yard right now. Unlike a traditional vegetable garden that demands expensive bags of potting soil, compost, and chemical fertilizers, our trash can system runs entirely on dead stuff. You are looking for dry, carbon-rich materials. If you recently pruned your shrubs, chipped some branches, or raked up a massive pile of dry autumn leaves, you have hit the jackpot. You can also use untreated wood chips, plain shredded cardboard from old delivery boxes, or clean straw if you have it. The only strict rule here is that the material must be dead and dry, not green and fresh like fresh grass clippings. Fresh green material has too much nitrogen and will turn into a hot, rotting mess of compost, which is great for your raised beds, but terrible for growing mushrooms. By gathering these dry yard wastes, you are not only cleaning up your property, but you are creating the perfect natural diet for the oyster mushrooms to devour and transform into pure protein for your family. Once you have gathered a big pile of dry yard waste and cardboard, we have to prepare it. Remember how I said we need to give our mushrooms an unfair advantage? We do this through a process called cold water pasteurization. In the old days, people would boil massive pots of water over a fire to sterilize their straw, which takes hours of hard labor and burns a ton of energy. But since we are practicing lazy gardening, we are going to use a brilliant shortcut. You simply take a large tub of cold water and mix in a few handfuls of hydrated lime, which you can buy for a few dollars at any garden center. Hydrated lime drastically raises the pH level of the water, making it extremely alkaline. You submerge all your dry cardboard and yard waste into this lime water and let it soak for about 12 to 16 hours. This high pH environment instantly kills off all the competing mold spores and bacteria that naturally live on the leaves, but amazingly, it leaves the structure of the material perfectly intact for our mushrooms. This cold water trick is the ultimate game changer, completely eliminating the need for boiling water and saving you endless hours of heavy lifting. After your yard waste has soaked overnight in the lime water, it is time to pull it out. But you cannot just toss it directly into your drilled trash can while it is dripping wet. Moisture control is the #1 reason why beginners fail at growing mushrooms. If the material is too dry, the mycelium will stall and die of thirst. If it is soaking wet and forming puddles at the bottom of the can, the material will go anaerobic and drown the fungi. To get it absolutely perfect, we use something called the squeeze test. You take a big handful of your soaked leaves and cardboard, and you squeeze it in your fist as hard as you possibly can. What you want to see is just 1 or 2 drops of water trickling out from between your fingers. If a steady stream of water pours out, it is way too wet, and you need to let the pile drain on a tarp for an hour. If no water comes out at all and the material feels brittle, it is too dry. This simple squeeze test requires 0 expensive moisture meters or complicated tools. Once you feel that perfect damp sponge texture, you know your free substrate is absolutely ready to be turned into a massive harvest of food. With our perfect substrate ready, we need to introduce the actual mushroom culture, which is called spawn. Think of spawn as the seeds for your mushroom garden, even though they are technically not seeds at all. You can easily order a small bag of oyster mushroom grain spawn online for incredibly cheap. Why do we strictly use oyster mushrooms for this trash can method? Because oyster mushrooms are the absolute beasts of the fungal world. They are incredibly aggressive, lightning fast, and they will eat almost any dead plant matter you throw at them. While other delicate mushroom varieties require perfectly controlled temperatures and specialized wood, oyster mushrooms will happily chew through your old cardboard boxes and dry garden leaves with massive enthusiasm. When you open your bag of spawn, it will look like ordinary grain covered in a thick white fuzzy web. That white fuzz is the mycelium, the living body of the fungus. It smells incredibly fresh, exactly like a clean forest after a rainstorm. This single bag of spawn is the only thing you will ever need to buy, because once you establish this system, you can keep it running perpetually. Now we get to assemble our protein factory, and the technique we use is often called the lasagna method. It is incredibly simple. You take your prepared damp yard waste and place a layer of it at the very bottom of your drilled trash can, making it about 2 inches thick. Then you take a small handful of your white mushroom spawn and crumble it up, sprinkling it evenly over the layer of damp waste. You are essentially creating a sandwich. Then you add another 2-inch layer of damp cardboard and leaves, followed by another sprinkling of mushroom spawn. You just keep repeating this layering process, alternating between the food and the fungi, until you reach the very top of the trash can. By distributing the spawn evenly throughout the entire container, you are ensuring that the mycelium does not have to travel very far to find its food. This allows the mushroom network to explode in growth, rapidly taking over the entire environment before any stray mold spores even have a chance to settle in. It is a brilliant, foolproof way to guarantee a massive yield with minimal effort. As you are building these layers inside your trash can, there is one critical physical step you absolutely must not skip: extreme compression. Fungi do not like empty space. The mycelium network needs to physically touch the organic matter in order to digest it and grow. If there are large, airy gaps between your leaves and cardboard, the mushroom growth will completely stop when it hits that pocket of air. So, after every single layer you add, I want you to press down on the material as hard as you can. Use your hands or even push down with a heavy brick, packing the damp substrate incredibly tight into the bin. You want to compress it so much that it feels like a solid, dense block of earth. This firm compression mimics the dense layers of fallen leaves on a natural forest floor. It ensures that the white mycelium can seamlessly jump from one piece of organic matter to the next, rapidly knitting the entire contents of the trash can into one massive, interconnected, biological organism. The tighter you pack it today, the bigger your protein harvest will be next month. Once your trash can is packed tightly to the very brim, it is time to seal the system. Place the lid securely on top of the can. Now, remember all those half-inch holes we drilled around the sides? We need to cover them up temporarily. The smartest way to do this is by using a roll of cheap micropore tape, which you can find in the first aid aisle of any pharmacy. This paper tape is absolute magic for lazy gardeners. It is breathable, which means it allows the vital oxygen to flow in and the carbon dioxide to flow out. But the pores in the tape are so microscopic that completely block dust, mold spores, and hungry insects from getting inside your pristine environment. Just place a small square of micropore tape over every single hole you drilled. This creates a beautifully protected, highly controlled microclimate inside the bin. The moisture stays locked inside, the pests stay outside, and your mushroom spawn is left in perfect peace to begin the crucial work of colonizing the garden waste. Your 5-minute physical labor is now entirely finished. The next step is finding the absolute perfect location for your trash can, and this is where most traditional gardeners make a huge mistake. Our instinct is always to put growing things in the direct sunlight right next to our tomato plants and pepper bushes. But mushrooms hate direct solar radiation. The harsh rays of the sun will quickly heat up the plastic bin, completely drying out the substrate and killing the delicate mycelium inside. Instead, you want to find the darkest, coolest, most forgotten corner of your homestead. Tucking the bin underneath the deep shade of a large fruit tree is an absolutely brilliant spot. The north side of a garden shed, or even deep inside a cool, unfinished garage, works perfectly too. You want a place where the temperature stays relatively stable and the direct sun never touches the plastic. By placing the bin in a shaded, protected area, you are letting nature do all the heavy lifting for you. You do not need to monitor it. You do not need to water it. You just walk away and let the shadows work their magic on your new protein farm. What happens next is the incubation phase, and while it looks like nothing is happening on the outside, there is a fierce biological war occurring inside that dark bin. Over the next 2 to 3 weeks, the white fuzzy mycelium will wake up and start aggressively eating the damp leaves and cardboard. It secretes powerful natural enzymes that break down the tough, woody fibers, converting that useless yard waste into dense fungal tissue. If you were to peek inside the bin during this time, which you should not do, you would see the entire brown mass slowly turning completely white, as if covered by a thick layer of snow. The mycelium is literally digesting the energy stored in the dead plants and organizing it into a massive network. The most beautiful part of this incubation period is that it requires absolutely zero maintenance from you. There is no weeding, no watering, and no fertilizing. The system is completely self-contained. You are simply letting time and biology do the hard work, transforming your free garden scraps into the building blocks of pure nutrition. After about 3 weeks, the mycelium will have completely consumed all the food inside the trash can. Now, it needs a signal from the environment to tell it that it is time to reproduce and create actual mushrooms. In the wild, this signal usually comes in the form of a cool autumn rainstorm. We are going to simulate that trigger to force an explosive harvest. When you notice that the material inside the drilled holes is completely stark white, it is time for action. You are going to take the lid off the trash can for just a few minutes to let a massive wave of fresh oxygen flood into the system. Next, if you can, let the ambient temperature around the bin drop by a few degrees. If it is outside in the fall, nature does this naturally at night. This sudden combination of abundant fresh air, a slight drop in temperature, and the presence of ambient light signals the fungal network that it is time to push out fruits. It is an incredible biological reaction that you get to orchestrate right in your own backyard. Within a few days of providing that environmental trigger, you will witness the most exciting phase of the entire process, which is called pinning. If you look closely through the holes you drilled, you will see tiny, dense clusters of what look like little white beads forming on the surface of the mycelium. These little bumps are called pins, and they are the infant stage of your oyster mushrooms. As soon as you see these pins pushing against the tape, it is time to peel the micropore tape off all the holes. The mushrooms have officially chosen their exit doors. At this exact moment, they need maximum fresh air to develop properly. This is when the real magic happens. As hundreds of tiny mushrooms begin to push their way out of the plastic holes, reaching for the open air, your trash can will suddenly look like it is sprouting white coral from every side. It is a stunning visual confirmation that your lazy gardening technique is working perfectly. Once the pins emerge through the holes, they enter the explosive growth phase. I am not exaggerating when I say that you can literally watch them grow. Oyster mushrooms can double in size every 24 hours under the right conditions. During this phase, they need a bit of ambient humidity to prevent their delicate caps from drying out and cracking. Since you already removed the tape, you will want to take a cheap spray bottle filled with clean tap water and gently mist the outside of the trash can once or twice a day. You are not spraying water directly into the holes or soaking the mushrooms. You are just creating a fine mist in the air immediately surrounding the bin. This mimics the morning dew in a natural forest. The mushrooms will absorb this ambient moisture from the air, swelling into massive, beautiful fan-shaped caps. Within just 4 to 5 days of the pins first appearing, you will have enormous bouquets of premium, protein-dense mushrooms hanging off the sides of your cheap plastic bin. Knowing exactly when to harvest is crucial to maximizing the quality of your protein. You do not want to wait too long. The perfect time to harvest oyster mushrooms is right before the edges of the largest caps start to curl upwards. When the caps are still slightly turned down toward the ground, the mushrooms are at their absolute peak of flavor, texture, and nutritional value. If you wait until they flatten out completely and curl up, they will release millions of spores into the air, creating a dusty mess, and the meat of the mushroom will become tough and woody. To harvest, you do not use scissors or a knife. You simply grab the entire cluster firmly at the base, right against the plastic hole, and give it a gentle twist and pull. The whole bouquet will pop right off in your hands. It is the most satisfying feeling in the world. From a single trash can, you can easily pull several pounds of gourmet food in just one afternoon, all without digging a single hole in the dirt. Here is the part that makes this the ultimate homesteading hack. That first massive harvest is not the end of the line. The white mycelium block inside your trash can still has plenty of energy left. After you pick all the mushrooms, you simply leave the bin exactly where it is. Over the next week or two, the mycelium will rest and gather its strength. You might need to mist the holes occasionally to keep the surface from completely drying out. Then, almost like magic, a second flush of baby pins will appear at the holes, and the entire explosive growth cycle will happen all over again. You can typically get 3, 4, or even 5 distinct harvests from the exact same $5 setup. Each subsequent flush will be slightly smaller than the first, as the nutrients in the dead leaves are slowly depleted. But the sheer volume of free food you get from one single bin is absolutely staggering. It is the definition of a passive high-yield crop. Eventually, after several months of continuous harvesting, the trash can will stop producing mushrooms. The mycelium has finally eaten all the available nutrition in the cardboard and yard waste. But this is where the story gets even better. For your vegetable garden, what remains inside that plastic bin is not garbage. It is called spent mushroom substrate, and it is arguably the single most powerful nutrient-dense soil amendment you could ever put on your raised beds. The fungi have completely broken down the tough carbon material, leaving behind a rich, crumbly, pre-composted supersoil that is teeming with beneficial microbes. When you take this spent block and crumble it directly around the base of your tomato plants, pepper bushes, or fruit trees, the results are explosive. It acts as a massive sponge, retaining water in the soil during hot summer days while slowly releasing perfectly balanced nutrients right to the roots of your vegetables. It is far superior to any expensive bagged fertilizer you could ever buy at a garden center. By setting up this simple trash can system, you are completely closing the loop on your homestead. You take the annoying waste from your yard pruning, you feed it to the fungi, and you harvest pounds of highly valuable, delicious protein for your kitchen. Then, you take the leftovers from that process and feed it directly back into your vegetable garden, creating stronger, healthier plants that will eventually produce more yard waste to start the cycle all over again. This is the absolute pinnacle of smart, lazy gardening. You are letting biological systems do all the heavy lifting, completely eliminating the need for store-bought fertilizers and expensive inputs. It is cheap. It takes practically zero physical effort, and it builds an incredibly resilient food web right in your own backyard. Once you try this method, you will look at every dead leaf and cardboard box on your property not as trash, but as future food and perfect soil. And there you have it, the ultimate secret to growing an endless supply of high-quality protein without ever touching a shovel or waiting for the sun to shine. We took $5, a simple piece of plastic, and the annoying yard waste you usually throw away, and transformed it into a biological powerhouse. Think about the incredible advantage this gives you. While other gardeners are constantly fighting the weather and spending fortunes on synthetic fertilizers, you are quietly harvesting gourmet food in the shade and producing the absolute best compost your raised beds have ever seen. Setting up this simple trash can system today will save you countless hours of back-breaking labor in the future while massively multiplying the yield of your entire property. It is time to stop working against nature and start letting the fungi do the hard work for you. Thank you so much for watching and learning with me today. If you found this homesteader hack valuable, please hit that subscribe button, give the video a like, and share it with someone who loves gardening. Now, I want to hear from you. What is the craziest thing you have ever used as mulch or compost in your garden? Let me know down in the comments. And I will see you in the next video.